the token killer. I never thought I would end up like this. A killer. A monster. But here I am, staring at the wall covered in photos of my victims, wondering how it all went so wrong. It started innocently enough. I was just a curious kid, always wondering about the world around me. But then something inside me snapped, and I started hurting animals. Small things at first, like throwing rocks at birds or torturing stray cats. But it wasn't enough. I wanted more. As I grew older, I began to fantasize about hurting people. The thought of their pain and suffering excited me in a way that nothing else could. And then, one day, I acted on those fantasies. It started with a woman I saw on the street. She was walking alone, and I followed her for hours, watching her every move. When she turned down a dark alley, I pounced. I don't remember much of what happened next, only the feeling of power and control I had over her. It wasn't long before I began to see patterns in my behavior. I would find someone who caught my eye, and then I would stalk them for days or even weeks before making my move. I would always leave a signature behind, a small token of my power. At first, the police didn't connect the murders, but as the body count grew, they began to realize that a serial killer was on the loose. They dubbed me the token killer for my signature. I reveled in the attention. I loved knowing that I was smarter than the police, that I was always one step ahead of them. But as the years went by, the thrill began to fade. I started to question my actions, to wonder if I was really as powerful as I thought. And then, one day, I met her. A woman unlike any other I had ever met. She was smart, beautiful, and fearless. She didn't flinch when she saw the photos on my wall, didn't recoil in horror at the things I had done. Instead, she saw something in me, something that even I couldn't see. And slowly she began to chip away at the walls I had built around myself. It wasn't easy, but over time I began to open up to her. I told her things I had never told anyone else, things that I was ashamed of. And she listened, without judgment. But then, one day, I came home to find her gone. There was no note, no explanation, just an empty apartment and a feeling of loss so deep that it threatened to swallow me whole. And that's when it happened. The thing I had been dreading all along. The police finally caught up with me. I remember the sound of the handcuffs clicking shut, the feeling of the cold metal against my skin. And then, the long, slow walk to the police car, the flashing lights casting an eerie glow on the world around me. But as I sat in my cell, waiting for my trial, something strange began to happen. I started having these vivid, terrifying dreams, dreams of my victims haunting me, begging for justice. At first, I thought it was just my guilt, my conscience finally catching up with me. But then, one night, I had a dream that changed everything. In the dream, I was walking down a dark alley, just like the one where I had killed my first victim. But this time, the woman I had killed was standing there, alive and well. And she was holding a knife. "You took something from me," she said, her voice cold and filled with anger. "And now, I'm taking something from you." And then, in one swift motion, she plunged the knife into my chest. I woke up gasping for air, my heart racing, drenched in sweat. It was then that I realized the truth. My entire life had been a lie. The woman I thought had accepted me for who I was had been manipulating me all along. She had played me, used my weakness and vulnerability against me. And now, she had finally gotten what she wanted, my downfall. As my trial approached, I knew that my fate was sealed. The evidence was overwhelming, and there was no way I could talk my way out of it. I had become the monster I had always feared, and now I would pay the price for my sins. On the day of my sentencing, I sat in the courtroom, numb and emotionless. I knew what was coming, and I had accepted it. But then, something unexpected happened. The judge looked at me, his eyes filled with pity, and said, "I'm sorry." And then, he sentenced me to life in prison, without the possibility of parole. For years, I sat in my cell, haunted by my past, tormented by my dreams. But then, one day, something strange happened. The dreams stopped. At first, I thought it was just a fluke, but then days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months. And slowly, I began to feel a sense of peace that I had never felt before. I don't know what happened to the woman who had played me, or where she is now. But one thing is certain. She may have taken my freedom, my dignity, and my soul. But she could never take away my hope, the hope that someday, somehow, I would find a way to redeem myself, to make amends for the things I had done. And so, I sit here now, writing this story, hoping that someone out there will read it and understand, that even the worst of us can find a way back to the light if we're willing to fight for it.